First of all, I don't know what you make of the rescue mission and the investigations so far that have been carried out into this.
First of all, let me thank you for this opportunity, and also again send our condolences to the families and wish quick recovery to those who are in hospitals, and hope that there will be some follow-up on the issue of trauma on some of the victims, because it's not only those who are in that place, but also the relatives of the said people. Once I've said that, it's important to say the government in its coordination did an excellent job this time round, and the communication was also good. Probably they saved more lives this time because of effective coordination and also timeliness in moving to the scene, and also ensuring that we do not suffer from friendly fire. Yeah.
And Gabriel Muthumo, when you look at this, what's your first reaction to the investigations that are going on?
Actually, let me totally agree with what my good friend Waziri has actually said, that we saw the efforts were well coordinated. Not only that, the swiftness that the security forces were able to, galvanize themselves and attack the scene. Thirdly, we also saw other people who came out. We've always been told that there's like an association of licensed firearm holders who came in and were able to be the first responders, and we are told actually they also helped in that scenario. So I think this time around it's more like we have been progressive, gaining insights from the attacks back in 1998. So it's more like we have been on a learning curve and things are going great. So it is actually very good if you are going to compare apples to apples between Westgate and what happened at Dusit. You will realize that the efforts were better and well managed. The communications, everything that came in was well coordinated. Having said that, I also think Sam, we have an issue at hand. And when we are reading such headlines and we are reading, these the terrorists, people who have been among us, I think this is the time we need to start relooking at homegrown terror with a very keen eye. We are told one of these sons, as we are getting the reports, and it's actually written on our daily, so we are just reporting these facts that are coming up, that is a son of a KDF soldier. So these are things that this country and the security apparatus are going to start, and actually the social fabric, so to speak, of this nation. We need to start relooking and getting insight and as much information as we can into homegrown terror. One thing I like what the president came out and said was, we are not going, we cannot create a distinction anymore between the terrorists themselves and those people who harbor them. So the people who have been found to have aided in this attack, I think they must be followed to the logical conclusion, using the constitutional mandates that we have within our nations, within our nation. But also, I think it is also key, Sam, among Kenyans now, to start thinking hard of what other initiatives we can bring in. Whether it is the Nyumba Kumi, what we are learning is that these people live among us. We can no longer bury our heads in the, in the sand and, just assume that, asira, if it happens, wherever it happens, it is okay. No, everybody now must be in line to try and understand as much as possible, who is this person who is living next to me?
All right, and Mheshimiwa, when you look at these and then the stories that we are seeing in the papers, and of course what has run on Citizen TV, you'll see us trying to trace the roots of this young man, Ali Salim Gishunge, that now can be traced to some home in Isiolo, and the locals are saying that he left Isiolo in 2013, and they have not heard of him. So when you look at this, where does it sit with our ability to stem radicalization and, of course, the kind of things that he has gotten himself involved in?
Okay. Well, thank you, and I would like to, first of all, join my colleagues in sending my condolence to those who lost their lives, and as well as wish quick recovery for those who are in hospitals and under psychosocial, counseling. Yeah, as my colleagues have alluded to earlier, I think terror is becoming homegrown. You can see some of these faces now looking familiar. These are Kenyan faces, and there is no longer an external affair. This is now becoming an internal problems that we need to actually really look deep into how we've been able to, go about this Nyumba Kumi initiative.
Right.
Because if you find people living with people they do not understand, either their origin, their way of life, how they go about their businesses, their daily businesses, what they do, and probably it's a high time we have a database as a nation on some of these things. And what is also very critical is that is increasingly becoming important to have some security apparatus or officers within these high-level buildings, because you can see this terror could be devastating more than this, but because of the quick response of some of the people who are either around and the security officers of the surrounding embassies and the banks were able to come in quicker. And even the personal, the individual firearm holders were also came in handy. So that tells you that it is also incumbent upon our security officers to see into it that we need some of these officers in secluded places that are of high high level, especially from the trend we've seen. The terrorists are targeting, the high-end areas, the wastelands, where most of our, partners across visit. So I think the security needs to also look into that, whether we can have some of these recce squad people around 24/7, or so that in case of such, they are able to come in quicker and they save more lives.
Right, and when you look at the details that are coming from the paper, you'll see of this Ali Salem Gishunge. Of course, the mother, Mariam, has now been arrested. Is claiming that is claimed to have reported the disappearance of the son in 2015 when Gishunge is believed to have crossed over to Somalia. Then the story goes on to say of a stepsister, Amina Sharif, who told the Nation from Mombasa that the family had long given up on the truant son. She's quoted saying, "I went home for the burial of a relative just a week ago, and my mother asked whether I had seen him. And she said, I told her that we should forget about him as death would let us know where he is." When you follow the story of this young man who sat his KCP in 2007, scored 335 marks, and then sat his KCSE in 2011, I believe, and scored a C+, this is quite a normal child, a normal Kenyan child, but then ends up into this. How do we, moving on, ensure that we do not get here with the young people that are going through the Kenyan system?
You know, the fundamental issue of terrorists or some of these guys is that they exploit the vulnerability of our society. And they know that every young generation, they think they are more sophisticated than the older generation. I remember the sagging trouser that we now have used to happen in 1965. But when we find it now, we, the older generation, we think it is not fashionable. But for young people, that is very good. Now, what do I have in mind? These fellows, of course, their objective is destruction. Their objective is evil. And therefore, they will look for those in society that can easily be recruited. And this, therefore, means that it is no longer about them. It's about us. You remember when we had the problem of AIDS, we used to think certain communities were sort of prone to the disease, but we've realized it's a serious disaster to the nation. We need to look at this thing as a serious disaster. We need to look inwards. We need to think of national cohesion. We need to improve our social fabric. We need to ask ourselves, why were we employing the watchmen in the past? Their work was just to block somebody who wants to bring nuisance to the boss. But the watchmen that we have today, we should give them some sophisticated training, because they are no longer dealing with just blocking nuisance. They are blocking terrorists from attacking certain soft targets.
Would that include
specialized training? It may be guns, but also some kind of training almost to detect, because the watchmen that we have are no different from the watchmen of the 60s. Even when they are trying to check your car, I don't know how much training they go through and how are they protected. Right. We need to look at some of these vantage points because in some countries, watchmen, they are first protected so that by the time they deal with you, they can easily retreat into a place of protection and block you from further entry. This is something that we must be thinking as a nation, but more important is the social fabric of our nation. Right. As long as we are not cohesive, as long as we're still allowing corruption to pervade our atmosphere, we are likely to be allowing these people to exist in our midst. Take, for example, somebody in Mushadha who was possibly the tenant of this person. Why was he not worried about this guy who comes in a very suspicious way, goes through the back door, and he hardly gets out of the house? Those are some of the issues that we need to make our society understand. In Tanzania, when you talk of Mijikumi, or what you call Nyumba Kumi in Kenya, that is not something that was imposed by government. It is something that is in the social fabric of the people of Tanzania. I lived there for 10 years, and I had the privilege of knowing, and even today, if I went to visit some of my relatives in Tanzania, the first thing they will report me to a central point, to the Mzee wa Mijikumi. And that Mzee wa Mijikumi will transmit the information, and that information is acted upon. Look at this issue of Kichunge. The mother reported that he was missing. Now, if he was detected coming back, and he was missing 2015, what has security forces been doing for the last 4 years without detecting that this guy who was missing has come back? Where did he come back from? These are some of the issues. Finally, the issue of our identification. Right. Our ID should be something sacred. That as a Kenyan, when you have it, is something so important. And if there is any suspicious issuance of IDs, that should be the first place of call so that we stop some of these things. But that is almost like preventive and also first aid. But the most important thing is more cohesion in our society.
Right.
And true to the fact, just to add on what my good friend has also said, as we talk about social re-engineering of how our youths are going to, move ahead in the sophisticates of the 21st century, yes, when they come out of school, we must ensure, and this is now where this is a serious issue of social engineering. We must ensure that we have systems that are ready to support their growth. Because if now these are young kids who finish high school and before you say anything, they've already found a way into places like Somalia, places like, going through the Al-Qaeda and Al-Shabaab training. And they also, it is very easy for them to go out, and also just as easy for them to come back and continue to mingle with the rest of Kenyans. I think, there's an element of failure in that direction. But as much as we would talk about, terror being a world problem, there is no country today, Sam, that can, that can come out and qualify and say, what, we have beaten terrorism. Right. No. So this is going to be an issue, and it's going to continue to morph. And as it morphs, we are only going to be as good as our intelligence will take us. So what do we do in that respect? We must continue investing as much as possible in our intelligence gathering, and not just gathering, but following it up to the logical conclusion, where we say, if people have been known to have moved and gone to terror training grounds, when they come back, are they just coming seamlessly and entering into the citizenry again, or are there methodologies and technologies, really, if you will, like what Mheshimiwa is talking about, the Kenyan ID, that we are going to invest in, so that we can know these are the elements that need to be looked after or watched over. So there are so many things which I feel that we should continue doing. Yes, we've done our very best. And so to speak, we know, just talking to people around, they will tell you that there are so many incidents that our security forces have been able to deter, and they are doing a great job. But we must continue as Kenyans, supporting them in this war against terror, whether it is through sharing information. And you know, Sam, when you talk about homegrown terror, you know, it's a very dicey situation. Look at a place like in the US, with all the best security forces that they have, you still have active shooter, somebody who will just show up with these, you know, barrage of firearm, and you know, like the things we've seen in Las Vegas. There was a shooter who went to, you know, Sandy Hook Elementary, and you know, was able to do a lot of damage to young children. You can go as far much back as you want to the likes of Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber. And these are people who were actually given out to the security forces by the citizenry. So we also, as citizens, have a very big job to do to ensure that our neighbors, we really know who our neighbors are. I commend most of the city estates who, you know, they know, or they have a way of understanding who their neighbors are. Right. They have a committee once in a while. They sit around and try understanding who is my neighbor. And I think that is the kind of spirit that we need to be, you know, to enforce. It is not going to be an easy thing to fight terrorism. This is a global issue. But we also must find our hands. We must put our hands, you know, or make our hands dirty, if you will, and find resonance in assisting our security forces, because I believe we have a lot of work as common citizens to help our security forces.
It's a responsibility for not just the authorities, but even us.
Of course.
Yeah, and just in addition, I think terrorism has also found a fertile ground in institutions of higher learning. And you've seen as the world, you know, grows in technology, and most of our youth generations, especially those in higher learning, institutions of higher learning, most techno-savvy generations are being used in this terrorism activity. Sure. And I think more focus should also be taken to the institution of higher learning, universities, colleges, where these groups are recruiting our young people, so that we also need to have a keen interest in how you know, our youths are growing up, because this is a vulnerable groups of people who are ready to experiment, they're ready to, you know, to try to shape their lives in various ways, and they're still very shy of you know, we need to really put a lot of focus where the terrorism is thriving, where they are recruiting the youth, and that's where the most focus needs to be put. And as you've seen, when we talk about even the tenants, the landlords who allow these people to inhabit, you know, live within us, I think we need to also look into all these people who allow, you know, do we just get anybody to live within us? Are we trying to find out his background before we even allow him? Or are we just rushing to get his money for the rent? You know, we really need to... The
question I was asking Senators Omatangi and Senator for Homa Bay, Moses Kajwang, yesterday is, do we just say that landlords need to get a database of who is coming, get a background check of who is coming, or do we need to institutionalize that so that it becomes a requirement? Because if I'm a landlord, how much power do I have to know your background as you come to rent a house in my...
I think it's more of a culture, whether we say we are institutionalizing or not. In this country, even
how practical can we make it?
I think we just need to, you know, make it a culture as a nation, because you've seen how we're losing our friends and our relatives through this, you know, terror act, and it's just incumbent upon Kenyans, whether there are laws or laws without laws. We just need to build that culture of just being responsible enough that, you know, this is a global and a national disaster that we all just must own up. So irrespective of whether there are laws or not, just as you know, as a culture of our nation, we need to really inculcate that really it is our responsibility, it's everybody's responsibility, it's not up to the, you know, the security forces. No, it's just a responsibility of every Kenyan, wherever you are, that you must be responsible for whoever you are allowing to reside within us. You must, you know the background of that person, so that we can avert some of these
So,
tax.
Honorable Kirwa, you've been a minister. I don't know whether you're a landlord, but maybe at some point in your life you have rented a house elsewhere. You don't want to say that. But how possible is it for a landlord to really have a proper background check to these people? Because when you, like I said, when you want to rent a house, you just present yourself with your ID, you give it, they take details, maybe your PIN number, they take details. But we do not have a system of checking. We do not have a linkage with the police.
I think they should. Well, I was a tenant in Southlands some time back before I got my own residence. And the Southlands is a very huge estate. And I would expect that such areas should be areas of focus. So that if you reside in Southlands, we should know in house number 105 or number 206 who stays there. And when you move, that information must also be captured, that you are moved and who has come in, so that there is some central. And you see, the beauty with Nairobi is that most of the areas are either gated or they are blocks, so that we know in block number 34, in somewhere in Westlands, who are the people staying in that place, what is the identification, what is the information, because you may find a block of flats and there may be about 10 landlords or different tenants and different landlords. But once we go block by block and we have information, when you move from one place to the other, we see where have you moved. It will be easy to trace people. Likewise in hotels. Some of these individuals, they may move from one hotel to the other. And when there is a certain suspicious movement and we have locked in that particular person, then we need to know. In some countries like Ethiopia, when you check in, almost the system knows that so-and-so, who is a foreigner, is in hotel 123. And when you check out and you go to another place, now you become a key suspect. Unless the hotel was full, and therefore you are told to move out because there was an earlier booking. You become a key suspect and they trace you. And this is exactly what we should be doing. We should, without necessarily making the life of our foreign brothers and sisters impossible. If you have moved into 5 hotels within a period of 1 month, we should be asking ourselves, what is he doing in all these hotels? So these are some of the ways we can do.
And also, that notwithstanding, you know, I see the downside of that would be we have areas in our city and major cities where we have informal settlements. So that in itself is very hard to kind of police certain dwellings. Secondly, don't forget, Sam, that you have a very huge group, and I don't know why it exists, of sympathizers, people who sympathize with terrorists, people who are ready to give their abodes to these individuals, people who will even finance them, right? Look at the kind of situations that we've been brought to, where you had the same car, a car with the same registration. Some of this did not come from a Juakali mechanic. This is something that came from government offices. So what does that tell you? The element of corruption also plays a very big part, you know, in aiding terrorism. And that's why I'm saying we have a responsibility. The last person manning the office has a very big responsibility in ensuring that these things do not happen. It is a multifaceted way of thinking that we must employ, so that you can say, you know what, this back does not, I don't need to push it to the next person. I don't need to push it to Mheshimiwa so that he can stand up for it. I need to do what I need to do and must do to ensure that if I'm the last man standing, I can be able to curtail such thinking. And so corruption comes in a very big way. Because even when you're talking about getting an ID, and that's what I'm assuming the landlord, I mean, that's the farthest the landlord can go, if we are to be honest, is to probably get that ID. Where will they take that ID? Probably to the police. What kind of database do they have, unless you create one? So how many people have we seen who've gone out to purchase these documents? We have people who are working with Kenyan passports, who actually got them, you know, through illegal means. So it must start somewhere, and where it starts, you know, the kind of approach that we must put is to make it very hard for terrorists, you know, not to give them an easy passage for them to, you know, to be trigger happy in our cities. So it is, again, that's why I keep insisting, it's incumbent upon us to look very deep and keenly and really ask ourselves, how do we move in this war? Because again, I have told you, it's a global threat. So it is not something that, you know, we must find answers, all answers in Kenya. No, but we must do our very best, because as they say, terrorists only need to succeed once and they'll create havoc. So we must have successive successes, if you will, to ensure we stop them as much as possible.
All right. And I'm seeing that in the Daily Nation story, as you talk about the slums, they are saying that police are investigating reports that Gishunga may have visited Nyeri's Majengo slums during the December holiday season to link up with other Somalia-trained youths. He's believed to have used the names Farouk, Juma, and Idris in Nyeri. So you can see that kind of confusion and suspicious trends. But I want to focus more on something else, that in 2015, after the Garissa attack, we saw a lot of hype in the investigating teams, in the fight against radicalization, in the fight against terrorism. We even saw the late Minister for Interior, General Joseph Nkaiseri, saying that the young men who had crossed over to Somalia were being given an amnesty to return back to the country and be rehabilitated. This man, Gishunga, is said to have left the country at around that time. Now he comes back, he's been in the country, now he has been part of this attack at in Nairobi. Why did we drop the ball that we lost all that momentum?
Well, I think the main challenge with Kenya is that people sleep on their jobs unless they are woken up by a disaster. Just like the traffic and all other issues. What needs to be done is that there must be a department that constantly monitors. And as they monitor, we should network with all other institutions. When I was seeing so many people being evacuated, I was asking myself, are we able to record these people, to know who they are, the 700 that we evacuated, so that as we follow with psychotherapy, which is very important for anybody caught up in such a situation, we are also able to monitor who are their linkages, and we should be able to get data about them. Because you realized even some of the terrorists, there were some people who were communicating with them on phone. So that if the 700, we are able to do proper network, and we do with the tooth comb, who are they? Because some of them may look like they were innocently being evacuated, but they could have been part of the conspiracy. So the problem with Kenya is that we have the knee-jerk reaction. I remember, and you know, I was in the Ministry of Agriculture. In the ministry, we could be almost upbeat about the outbreak of armyworms. Then after that, we almost forget and we don't take any safety measures so that how do we prevent the happening of it? So that we become permanently on the curative end of the stick instead of being on the preventive end of the stick. That is where the problem is, because we should have asked the officers, when did this boy come back? And in that amnesty of Nkaiseri, how many people came back and where are they? This is follow-up is so important in any enterprise.
Okay. What do you have to say about that?
Very well. I think he has put it. I think we as a country, we've done very well in terms of what I may call curative measures towards this terrorism. But this aspect of preventing, I think is where we need to focus so much. If we just talk about terrorism when it happens, but now thereafter we go about our business, and then we'll still be landing in the same ditch. So I think it is imperative that as a nation we have a unit that really deals with a continuous assessment of activities of terrorism activities within or even outside across our borders. As much as we have porous borders, we have now seen that it's actually generating within our country. These are people who are living within us. They are being trained around us, and I think more focus should be look at monitoring and preventive measures more than just we've done very well. We can see our approach and our response is superb, but I think where now going forward, where we need to really put focus as a country is how do we prevent this in future.
Okay.
And you know, I mean, he said it quite right. Notwithstanding, I mean, and we must always give kudos and congratulate, you know, how the security forces moved, you know, the kind of speed that they employed. I mean, Sam, when you look at the fact that 700 people are able to be evacuated within that premise within a very short period of time, that just tells you we've come a long way, you know, learning how to deal with such situations when they emerge. You saw how the police came in, you saw how the embassies, you know, within that area also came in to give aid. So the fact that there's good communication, at least, you know, really helped and aided in evacuating as many people as possible. Even though we are talking about 14 deaths, and that's not a smaller thing. Those are Kenyans who are just going out, you know, and other foreigners who had come to our country, who are enjoying our nation, and, you know, they were just going in or with their normal business, and, you know, their lives were cut short. As much as we would like, you know, to really sympathize with their families and everything else, we must also realize that quite a lot was done to ensure that that number of casualty was actually at a bare minimum. The fact that, yes, something seems to be working, which we also need to support. We cannot also help not raise the fact that we need more when it comes to issues like counterterrorism. When young men and women are being trained in our country, and we are hearing about this news, we are actually being told about Al-Shabaab brides. You know, we must ask the aspect of the social fabric. Where are the parents, number one? Where are the spiritual leaders? Where are the likes of Akina Moshimura? Where is our parliament? Those are some of the key areas where, you know, they must act as moral gatekeepers. Sam, let me tell you, it is not hard nowadays for people to recruit young people, and they've done so. And that's why you keep on hearing that, you know, a child is lost, and you're like, lost where? Where did they go? How did they even begin to be indicted into or induced into such behaviors or into such talk of becoming suicide bombers? So we have a lot of work to do. And as we go through that, let us also realize that even as moral gatekeepers, we need to come in with a very straight face. And not only a straight face to rebuke, but also to build in structures and institutions that will support the growth of these young men and women, failure to which will just be chasing at our tail. Yeah.
And I'm sure you may, not sure, I don't know whether you have seen what has been trending is the whole of yesterday, judiciary aiding terrorism. And this is coming at a time that just before the attack, there's a Westgate terror attack, a suspect who was discharged based on lack of sufficient evidence to convict him. So when you, now because we are at it again, I mean, we are investigating. 9 people have been arrested, investigations are continuing, and eventually, once we reach the threshold of what evidence is required, you will see cases being taken to court. And then the court will have time to consider this. Is there any other way of dealing with it? And do you believe that judiciary is hampering the fight against terrorism?
Well, I think far from it. You know, even as a country, we do not have even laws about piracy. I think it's the other day that we institutionalized the law. And you know, terrorism and piracy are twin brothers. And they could be fraternal or identical. But the issue is that they are very closely linked. Now, when we blame judiciary, it means we have not understood the issue. We've not understood the issue that this is fundamentally not institutionalized kind of activity. It is done by people who were almost prophesized in the 40s and the 50s that society is evil and man is evil. And at any rate, they seek power so that they subdue others. And if that prophecy has come true today, now what we need to do is to disabuse ourselves of some of these notions, because judiciary acts within a certain framework of the law. Now, this terrorism does not you need to have credible evidence to convict a terrorist. But if the investigation did not give let's say information to convict the terrorist, judiciary's hands are tied, and therefore we are blaming the wrong person. Number 2, what we need to understand is that terrorists, they are at best when they divide our society. When they say it is about Muslims, about Somalis, but And that is exactly what they want. When you go to Northeastern, when they are killing people supposedly from other parts of Kenya, they are saying they are not dealing with Muslims because they just want that division to persist. When they are here, they are killing everybody, Muslims and Christians alike. They are destroying everybody.
Sure.
So with the moment we fall for that trap, then we are going onto that pigeonhole that we may not come out of it. Now, I wanted us to look at it the way Muthuma said. It is a social problem. And being a social problem, we need to attack it from society.
Correct.
One, corruption is a problem. When you take you recruit a child from family A and you exclude one from family B, you are already breeding grounds for terrorism because you are creating discontent in our society. So what we need to do is to fight corruption, not because we don't like the individual, but we like him and he needs to move away. Finally, I just wanted to advise Ndugu Muthuma here that why is it possible that when I'm building a house wherever I live, I need to supply information, drawings, so that that information is captured in a certain office in city hall. Why is it that when I have an informal structure and I have a tenant, why don't I supply the same information to a central office, so that any structure, formal or non-formal, must be registered of necessity, so that in Nyeri County, for example, where it comes from, anything, whether it's a kiosk, must have a number, the way somebody has an ID. So that if there is a problem about that area, we know it is Sam who happens to own that structure and he has rented to Mheshimiwa Amisi. So that we know the link between Sam and Amisi. And at the end of the day, we should be able to trace that informal structure regardless of the informality of it. So that you do not own a structure, you don't stay in a structure unless it is registered.
All right.
We make it a law.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know if you have anything to say about the judiciary and the fight against graft.
I think he puts it correctly. It will be naive for us as a people to think that judiciary can stand in against the war against terrorism. Judiciary, of course, they work within the certain parameters of the law. And they cannot be the one also breaking the same law they are supposed to be the custodian of. And that's why the war against corruption now becomes beyond their scope, because this is a social problem and it needs to be tackled within our social setup and not the judiciary. Judiciary may do their part, but without clear, because when you talk about evidence in a terrorism case, what kind of evidence are you looking for? What are the threshold of the evidence, for you to actually take somebody in? So I think we really need to give judiciary, on this one. I think they may not be of help so much unless we tackle it from any other angles of, social angle, and not from the judiciary.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I want to look at some of the feedback that is coming through just before you have a go, Muthuma. Someone is saying that I am told in Lebanon, before the landlord leases a house to a tenant, the information about that tenant is forwarded to the police for processing and approval.
Yeah.
Yes.
Another one is saying that the traffic department needs to be serious, because I think that from Malindi to Mombasa there are a lot of roadblocks, and from Mombasa to Nairobi we must have roadblocks. The police must check one by one to detect arms, because the guns I saw with the terrorists are big machine guns, so we wonder. Of course, he's wondering how these young men were able to carry such kind of weaponry without detection, and obviously they used Kenyan roads.
Exactly, and Sam, that's what everybody has, and he's not only the person who's observed that, but very many people have actually observed that, because when you travel just outside Nairobi, there are so many roadblocks, and most of the times you wonder, what are the people who are manning these roadblocks? What are they checking? Because if you're able to bring such a cache of equipment, let's assume it's coming from the very same place, the Al-Shabaab infested grounds in Somalia, and you're able to transport, such a cachet into the city of Nairobi, what then? You know, can you not bring? So we also need to go back to what we talked about, corruption.
Right.
You cannot tell me all those people who are manning roadblocks on all those roads did not or were able to live up to the duty that they signed up to do. So, I mean, again, that is a challenge that we are posing, you know, to the people who are manning these roadblocks. What are you doing? And that's why I told you, if you are the last person, you must live up to the true meaning of being a true Kenyan. And that's how we are going to save lives. Let me, you know, just very quickly, you know, point again, put my thought on the judiciary. So I think the judiciary has a lot of work to do. And by this, I mean, if we are going to have terror suspects that are coming to their chambers, yes, it must be accompanied by very good evidence, but the judiciary should not be seen to be lenient. And I'm saying this with the best...
but the CJ will tell you that they depend on the weight of the evidence.
I understand. But you know what? Other jurisdictions really have actually... You know, it's not easy to actually collect evidence.
Yes.
When it comes to terror suspects, because I mean, like I told you, you saw it's a web. Look at it, how it has gone. Yeah. You have financier, you have sympathizers. So this is not something that, you know, you will collect evidence as quickly as the way I would do if I come and find that you've had an accident or you've done some small, minute things here. You're looking at a global phenomenon, which will take you time to even do cross-border intelligence.
So how do you suggest to go about it?
So the judiciary should aid. Keep these people the maximum, and I repeat, the maximum time allowable. And by the way, and I'm not saying this is what I support, but look at what America did at the advent of September 11th. Why was Guantanamo Bay opened? You know, because it could not go through the American legal, just because they realized, you know, if we allow these people to manipulate our justice system, given the laws, the lawyers that we have out here, we may be cooked. So we just need another avenue of dealing with these people. And that's why I'm asking, the judiciary should just assist with holding these people the maximum time allowable. Because when you're looking at collecting evidence, the kind of evidence you need, and this is very serious. When you're looking to, you know, getting information from multi-agencies, it will take time. It won't take the normal required time where you just, you know, you've not given us enough evidence, we are going to allow this person to be out on bail, we are giving you 500,000. No, this should not be business as usual. Okay, and of course there's feedback that has been coming through on text 22422 as well as on Twitter, Citizen TV Kenya Sam Gituku with the hashtag Daybreak, and I just want to review some of them. Someone is saying, someone actually who thinks almost the same way like Muthuma. Kiprun Abraham is saying that terrorism can only be dealt with if we remove courts from the fight against terrorism. We need a section of security officers empowered to investigate and execute terrorists. No courts, just instant execution on suspicion. But this could be a recipe for chaos in this country, because remember, some of these suspects are Kenyan and covered by the Constitution of Kenya, and they enjoy a right to life. That's true. And a right to be presumed innocent until proven guilty. So how do we strike that balance between the rights of these Kenyans who are suspects vis-a-vis the interests of the nation and dealing with this kind of an offense?
Correct. There is a thin line between now the right of the terrorists and, you know, but I think we don't really need to look at the judiciary so much, because it cannot be the one tearing away our judicial system when it's supposed to be the custodian. I think we should look at then now our laws, or maybe parliament, how we can come up with strong laws that will guard us from these terrorism activities. So probably we can amend some of our laws in relation to our terrorism, so that we give it we give a certain threshold or on an aspect of the terrorism activities. The judiciary will have an easy time and will not have a blame to it, because as it is now, they work on the laws that exist, and they have to work within. Otherwise, it will be a chaotic judicial system.
Usually they say the normal state of affairs is a state of anarchy. And I can hear anarchist here. What Miss is saying is very true.
Yeah.
Can we raise the threshold, or can we make it that if you are suspected of terrorism, you operate under separate laws that are not the laws that we have for any other criminal. In that way, the judiciary will have the leeway to deal with such individuals. Now, the other thing which is also important is, I saw a gentleman at the scene with a gun that was later on said to be more sophisticated than is allowed. Now, this goes to the licensing of guns. How do you license so many people? Right. You've seen so many people, some of them are young and vulnerable, and they are given guns as if, are those guns meant to protect them, and from what? Or are they meant to allow them to be on the offensive? We have to also to look at the guns that we give out, the people that we give licenses to own guns, because some of these guns can be misused. And therefore, we need, apart from training of our security forces, to be also strict. Why do I need a gun? Why do I need a gun? And I'm not saying I don't have what I have, because I'll be exposing myself to unnecessary danger. But the truth of the matter is, since you are born Sam, have you seen the need for you to have a gun? You are not even properly trained. The same gun can be used against you. And that's why some of the fellows are killed in the streets with their own guns. Because once they know you have a gun, and you do not know, you become a target of some of these people. So we need to be careful. And as Muduma said at the beginning, this is a social problem. Right. As a nation, we must put our mind on it. We declare it a very serious issue, and we spend resources. Otherwise, we remain vulnerable because we are dealing with a very long border with Somalia. Right. And terrorism is not bred in Somalia. It is only that it is multiplied in Somalia. But otherwise, the origin of terrorism is elsewhere. And now it has come back home. And when it's at home, it is impossible to fight it. Some of the parents, I'm sure, they are placed at the awkward position, because we used to be told in the old days that never defend your child or your dog. You never know where they are. So it is something serious.
Okay.
Yeah. And on that point that he has made, very crucial point, that this gun ownership, because is it a loophole that some of these people are using, that at the end of the day I own a gun, so how do you know whether he's a terrorist who owns the gun? Yes, he's licensed, but what for? What is the use of the license? And I think we also need to look at there, because even the individual owners of guns who go into our premises, there are way of checking that once you come in and you own a gun, there are details that are taken. Are we able to actually find? Because you can see those individuals who are standing there with big machines and and ready to terrorize Instagram with photos.
I think the distinctions we must make is, you have licensed firearm holders who are well trained, who respect the Firearm Act, and who by their right, just like normal citizens, have a right to bear arms. And then, Mheshimiwa, you have the slakings. And me, I have a problem with that, just like so many other Kenyans have, a problem with that. The fact that
Defense
you can...
for this show.
I mean, you're just coming to look for a photo op while people are dying. It is wrong. As a matter of fact, it should be just...
No, I'm saying you need to define slaking for the show.
No, you're just doing it for photo ops. You did not come there, we saw at Westgate. Who can forget Hajj? How many people... And by the way, if you have people who are well trained, when they show up in such a scenario and they know what to do,
must be controlled.
I am telling you, they have saved lives. You saw at Westgate. They saved... Because honestly, the police cannot be anywhere. Before they are able to get the communication, before they are able to raise up their numbers and be able to report to the scene, the people who are there are the first responders. And we are told of a gentleman called Kasam, and the amount of people he helped out. So this is somebody who understands, counterintelligence. So somebody who understands probably counter-terrorism. Somebody who understands how to evacuate people. And if we can have people, and probably this I would put it out there, if there is a form of training that can be given to Kenyans who are above board. This is what I keep insisting. Who are above board? I mean, there is a criteria, obviously, of how you go about to acquire that particular file. You should be a person of these means, you know, have good standing, you know, no criminal record, blah, 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 the whole 9 yards. And they're able to be given such training just to be or to facilitate when it comes to issues like this. Because this is not the last time we've seen of terrorism, and we have to be alive to that fact. Same way we train people to be first aiders. If we can have a group of such people who are mindful, and again, I repeat, they are above board, not the slay kings again, because them, they are just showing up for the photo op. And I think it was actually the wrong place at the right time. It wasn't right. But there are people.
Wrong place at the right time.
You know, there are people who can actually, you know, help and aid in the situation if it does so.
Blamal Njururi says that the weakest point in fight against terrorism is the government neglect of Nyumba Kumi, which was renamed Citizen Participation in Security. I even developed a website, Citizen Participation Security.org, for free, but the Interior Ministry totally ignored the gift. I don't know how true that is, but it's a good effort. I hope someone is listening and seeing how Kenyans, ordinary Kenyans, can contribute to improving the situation for the entire country. Someone else is saying that we need to be true Kenyans. Tanzanians wanajua mgeni mara moja.
Of course.
Another one says that that takes me back to how public leaders view the men manning those roadblocks. They are locked down. They're looked down upon, and nobody allows his car to be searched. So what do they do? I don't know how true that is, but quite a complaint there. Then someone else says that there's a big loophole of security between Moyale Road to Isiolo. The government has to do proper security checkpoint. The buses from Moyale to Nairobi are carrying so many things to the city, including aliens, but the police roadblock are corrupted, and even military patrol guys. So security must be tightened, like Garissa Bridge. Please, we are seeing every day buses are not inspected along Moyale Isiolo. I think these are just some of the challenges that we face, and if we were to tighten and enhance how they are implemented, would be one problem less.
I agree. I agree. And somebody said yesterday that when people are getting into Kenya, we don't seem to be keen to check their luggage, except KRA, because we are money oriented. So I think we also need to know, because like when you go to some of these countries, they seem to check you more than when you are checked in Kenya.
Right.
So we need also to know these people coming from other parts of the country, or other parts of the world, what are they bringing to Kenya, apart from themselves? And you will see even some of the stories, without getting personal, some of the fellows who are killed, some of them who are evacuated, they have some linkages with some Kenyan partners. Partners in the sense that possibly a girl and a man and so forth. What we need to do is also to go through, as we take some of these people through psychotherapy, we need to understand what was the relationship and how were they staying and what was the kind of lifestyle of this particular individual. We need to do an audit of every person who comes to Kenya. That's why you hear our children, our daughters are killed by some of these guys who come stay here. They make use of them, and when they leave, they kill them for lack of a better thing to do with them. So these are some of the things that we need to look at ourselves as a nation. And I agree with most of the viewers that as a nation, we must be jealous about the fact that we are Kenyans, parties notwithstanding, differences in political opinion notwithstanding, differences in religion notwithstanding, different tribes notwithstanding. We are Kenyans first.
Thank you so much.
And very, very quickly, you know, we have like,
seconds.
You know, why I say we must renew our relationship with our security forces is because the Mwananchi has a lot. And so the fact that he wants to report things that he sees, he should actually feel so comfortable running to a police station. Let me finalize something that I told you about somebody who was called the Unibomber, Ted Kaczynski. You know, when the forces, you know, and he destroyed so much, he used to send bombs in mails, and he used to write letters. But when the police had come to an end, and they realized, you know what, we need to cut this fellow because of the damage that he's causing. Let us use the public. And they broadcasted some of the letters that he wrote. One person looked at a letter the way it was carved, and realized who had written that letter. And do you know who actually made that person to be caught? Was his own brother. He realized this person has carved this letter like my brother would do. And that's how the Unabomber was ended up being caught. What am I saying? That the police must be very involving and make a very comfortable situation for the Mwananchi, me and you, to feel okay going to a police station. Not where you go to a police station and then you start being grilled as if you're a terrorist. No, they should make an avenue whereby I feel comfortable bringing information, and I think we'll get somewhere.
Your final word, Mheshimiwa.
Yeah, I think terrorism is with us, and as a nation is incumbent upon us to wake up to that reality and take it as a personal responsibility in our daily life to be fighting terrorism.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Avia is saying, your final word will be based on this. Avia is saying that, this is David Neto, says that in addition, the major target for recruits are the youth. And since there is payment, there's unemployment, and unemployment is high, many do join. So he's blaming unemployment and lack of money for this. Do you think this is the
unemployment
position?
may just be a side factor, but the main factor is lack of fairness in our society. We need to be fair to all young Kenyans, so that if I'm qualified to do job A, I should get the job regardless of who my father is, who my mother is, or which background I come from.
Okay.
That is the way we should tackle this menace of corruption and menace of terrorism.
Okay. And finally, a Fantas from Kirinyaga says that I don't know what Musha, the landlord, has to tell us, but those guys do bribe their way in even to landlords. Given a chance, I can clarify further, but one has to be very vigilant when giving houses, or rather when renting out houses. So just talking about the challenge that we have, that however good systems you may have, if at all we do not deal with the vices that affect the society, including corruption, we may not get so far in the fight against terrorism.